Okay, everybody, if we can take a seat. Can you all hear me at the back? Yes? We don't have microphones, so we'll try and keep our voices loud. My name's Oram. I'm from the Cuba Solidarity Campaign, and I'll be chairing the session this morning. We've got a stellar lineup of speakers for you today. We want to try and leave plenty of time for you to speak as well, so we'll keep it to around 10 minutes for each contribution. These things are great in talking to each other and listening to speakers like you're going to listen to now, but it's also important that we do things in these events. And don't forget the piece of paper on the table there. It's going to get referred to lots today on your chairs, but we want these filled in and we want you to leave a message for the five. As George and others have said in the earlier session, there is the International Commission in the UK next year for the five, and it's vital that we get as much support as we can for that. So please, if we do nothing else today, let's sign that form and make sure it's handed back, or you leave the message, take a photo and uplift it at the Cuba Solidarity Store in the main hall. I'm going to introduce somebody who's quite possibly familiar to many of you in terms of those of you who read about Cuba. He's wrote 2 books on democracy in Cuba and the elections within Cuba, and the latest one, Democracy Now in Cuba, is an extremely invaluable tool in terms of taking away from some of those myths that we hear all the time thrown at us as to how Cuba isn't democratic and how its regime doesn't actually hold elections or have any democracy within it. It's a brilliant aid to that, and I'm sure, as well as his website, his talk today will give you an even greater insight into those issues. So it's with great pleasure and honour to introduce August Arnold.
Thank you very much. So we have no microphone. I have to make the effort to speak loud, and you have to make the effort to understand my accent. So together we will work it out. I only have 10 minutes. First, I would like to deal with an important point, and that is I have asked Fernando Gonzalez, one of the Cuban Five, to send a message of greetings from the Cuban Five, from prison, to you here today. First, it says, dated November 29, 2013, from his prison. Greetings from the Cuban Five, all in attendance at this important event. Specifically to the members of the Cuba Solidarity Campaign, to the trade unionists, and to all our friends, thank you very much. Specifically also sends thanks and greetings to the members of Parliament who have signed petitions, who have made specific efforts for the release of the Cuban Five and the right of their families to visit them. One of the themes today is on the question of the blockade against Cuba. And I would like to just read one very small paragraph from Fernando on behalf of the Cuban Five that expresses the sentiment and the sentiment of the Cuban people against the U.S., as well as their determination to continue on the same path. He writes, Fernando writes, we Cubans have been made to pay a very high price by the U.S. authorities for maintaining our decisions to be an independent country. He goes on to say, for more than 50 years, it has been the official policy of the most powerful country history has known to strangle the Cuban economy. The criminal rationale behind such policy, as described in declassified documents by the Department of State, is to create hardships for our people with the false illusion, how he put it, with the false illusion that we would blame the Cuban government for the situation. The policy has failed for more than half a century and will continue to fail for as long as it is implemented. We will not surrender, and we will continue to overcome the difficulties and build a social project that aims to achieve justice for all. We Cubans have the right to live in an independent country and to choose the economic and political systems that would be appropriate for our conditions. This is coming from the cell of the U.S. prison, and everyone knows U.S. prisons are really jungles where it is difficult even to survive, and they have been surviving and fighting for over 15 years. And I'd like to go now on the issue of the Cuban Five. At this time, when we are meeting here today, for one of the rare times, I've spoken on the Cuban Five quite often in several countries, and this is the first time I can say that we have to be optimistic. Something is in the works right now in order to free the other 4 Cubans who are still in prison and is already free. And that is, just last week, a few days before this conference, it became public that 66 U.S. senators signed a letter to President Obama asking him to take any measures necessary in order to free Alan Gross. Alan Gross is the U.S. aid contractor who's been arrested in Cuba and is serving a 15-year sentence in Cuba. Secondly, at the same time, the Gross family have made statements asking for the release of Alan Gross and to take any measures necessary for him to be released. They do not say it should be conditional. In addition, Alan Gross wrote from his cell on December 3rd that, writing to Obama directly, he said, "You have in the past called for my unconditional release." That is, to be released from prison in Cuba without having any humanitarian exchange with regards to the Cuban Five. Said that you have called for my unconditional release, and I very much appreciate that, but it has not brought me home. There's a very clear message, I think, from the Gross family on that. And the next day, Josefina Vidal Ferrero, who is the head of the United States desk at the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs, wrote a public statement addressed to the Obama administration saying that they are prepared to negotiate a humanitarian solution to the issue of Alan Gross's release, but linked to the release of the other 4 Cubans still in jail. They've indicated that before, but for the first time, it's really very indicated in such a manner. And you even have, the next day, Susan Rice, who's the National Security Advisor to Obama, she called not for the unconditional release of Gross, but she called on the government to release our innocent jailed compatriots. So you see the language is changing. I think that there's every reason to be optimistic. This is the first time, right now, we speak today, that the American government and the Gross family are calling for the release of Alan Gross, but not unconditionally. They're calling on Obama, not an administration of 2 or 3 years when Obama's mandate is over, but they're calling on Obama now to take measures, any measures necessary, which means including what we would call a prison swap for other four people in jail for Alan Gross. And I think there's every reason to be optimistic about this. I think that this is taking place now. There are 4 still in prison, but in February, mid-February, Fernando will be released. That's in a very short period of time. So there will only be 3 left. So if you want to talk in cold figures, it will be 3 for 1. But I think it's important that people in the Solidarity movement do not pay attention to what the Gross family says about the Cuban government or illusions about Obama and the U.S. government. That is not important. The most important thing is that the many senators, the Gross family, other people in high positions, including Rice, very recently, say that there's a need for some kind of action in order to get Gross release without any conditions. And I think this is a time for us to increase the pressure on the Obama administration from the UK, from Canada, and from the US. And if it doesn't happen, if this humanitarian exchange does not happen in the next few weeks, we know that there's a very important international commission taking place right here in London in a few months, and it might be something that will help tip the balance in favor of a humanitarian solution to this problem, where the remaining 3 in prison will be released in exchange for the release of Alan Gross. But it depends on us to keep the pressure on the Obama administration and everyone else involved on this issue. Thank you very much.
much, Arnold. That was an excellent introduction to the topic. I'm now going to introduce our second speaker. Dodie is also from the Cuba Solidarity Campaign. She was instrumental in organising a great exhibition that some of you may have seen last year, or the year before, I can't remember now, Beyond the Frame, artwork from Cuba, all including some from the Five themselves, which toured the country and raised the issue, not just with our normal supporters. It was brilliant because it was actually aiming at a different audience, and I think that is important in terms of widening the message at every opportunity. But Dodie is now one of the key workers and helpers and instrumental in organising the commission, and she's going to talk to us about that now. Dodie Weppler-Grogan.
Okay, I'm going to be very brief, but it is a very important event that I want to talk to you about. So I just say, just before I start though, that it's very interesting to hear about different developments that are taking place. But I think that we have to be very clear what our responsibility is and where our eyes have to be. And that is that whatever negotiations are going on, diplomatically, politically, legally, we have to be clear that we've got 4 Cubans that have been framed up, that are in prison, that are part of a course that a case that has growing international significance. So that is what I want to talk to you about, this particular initiative, which is, as everyone has mentioned, a commission of inquiry. It's on the 7th and the 8th of March. It's at the Law Society, and it's in London, and we want everyone to get involved in building it and attending it. It came out of a meeting in Berlin last year of solidarity groups and with the International Association of Democratic Lawyers. And the Cuba Solidarity Group in this country is actually hosting the event. And we've had strong sponsorship from unions such as Unite and Unison, as well as from Thompson's trade union law firm, and other sponsorships are obviously under development. So it's a very ambitious project, and it's the most significant initiative that has been taken in the campaign for Justice for the Five in Europe to date. But it's unique in another way, because as people have mentioned, our guest of honor, if the plans go as we expect they will be Rennie Gonzalez, the first of the 5 to be released. And in fact, this will be the first time that he will be speaking in Europe, and probably the first time he's left left Cuba since he was released. So we're very honored to have him here, and it'll be a wonderful event. But it's so I just want to say what's involved. There's 2 sides to it. It's a 2-day event. The first side is the legal side. We have renowned legal figures that are going to be participating in it, and we'll be hearing first-hand evidence from victims from Cuba who have been victims of terrorist attacks, from members, we'll have many members of the family, 4 or 5 members of the family who've been campaigning all these years for the Cuban 5, and we'll have specialists in particular fields that are relevant to the case. The commissioners are internationally renowned, the team of commissioners that we have, including people like the former Chief Justice of India, a judge who served in the South African Constitutional Court after apartheid, and we also have Martin Garbus. Now he heads the legal team in the US for the 5, and he's been described as the finest trial judge in the world. And of course in the UK it's being endorsed by many prominent legal figures, such as Helena Kennedy, Michael Mansfield, Lord Anthony Gifford, John Handy, and many other QCs and legal experts. So you can see from this that we're going to have a very authoritative report at the end of the proceedings. But it is going to be more than a legal event. We're going to have a number of panel discussions with special guests that will be there. We'll have a major cultural evening on the Friday night, and that's going to take place at the Barbican. And we're expecting 2,000 people to attend. So that's a fantastic audience to hear Cuban musicians, UK actors, and obviously Rennie will be giving greetings as well. And on the Saturday evening, we're going to have a gala celebratory evening event, including a dinner. And we'll also be having an important exhibition of art, which will be the official opening of the exhibition in this country of 15 watercolors that Antonio Guerrero, one of the 5, has done in prison. So, as I say, there's 2 sides to it, a serious legal proceeding and a catalyst for campaigning activity. There's 4 things we could do, but I want to concentrate on one, and it's the one that keeps mentioning. We have just launched this website, and that is, everyone should know about it, look at it, and use it. It's called www.voicesforthe5.com, and it's in the leaflets at the bottom of the leaflet, that's on your seat. We're absolutely delighted with this, the success of this. We've had 2,500 messages from around the world sent to the 5 on the website. We have had messages from every single continent. We've had, the Cuban people have joined in. We have people in Cuba from medical brigades around the world, from the Seychelles, have left messages. We've had very esteemed individuals from Cuba, such as Ricardo Alarcon, who's given us a video clip. But it's become a really wonderful interactive tool. It's got all the information. If you don't know about the case of the 5, where it's at, then go to that website. It has news updates regularly. And the good thing about it is you can use it. You can talk to people about, have you seen the website? Show it to them on your phone if you've got a smartphone. And it only takes a few seconds. Take a picture if you want. If not, it's okay. You just have to put your name, leave a message, and it's up there, and you join very, very prominent people as well that are on it, and who are listed here. The other thing we want you to do, though, is to get the website out. If you're on a mailing list anywhere, then we want you to see, can this be sent out as well? We've got all the information for you if you want to do it. Just let us know. So the website's a campaigning tool, and we want you to do everything you can to use this, to tweet, to Facebook it, to blog about it. And we want to do it today, and we're going to be around and getting messages from you, we hope. Secondly, we want you to consider if you know anybody that could join the list of endorsers that we have, high-profile individuals that are very important to the campaign because they allow us to open more doors and get a broader audience for the campaign. And thirdly, get your local organization, trade union, or your campaign to plan motions of support and activities of support to support and fund the International Commission. But above all, come and bring your colleagues, bring whoever might be interested, and think broadly, because after all, cases of injustice, wrongful imprisonment, aren't a million miles away from the experiences of every one of us. I just want to say that in organizing this, we obviously have some restrictions, the size of the room, for instance. And it has to be on a first-come, first-served basis. So all of the information is going up on the website in mid-January. If you want to come, then that's where you want to get the information and register to come. So it's going to be a very interesting, exciting, and inspiring event. And hopefully, it will bring closer the day of return to Cuba for these 5 very, very brave men who have outstanding courage. They have a wonderfully creative spirit and deeply rooted internationalism, as I said, with 3 of them having served in Angola against the apartheid forces. But above all, these men are men of great integrity.
Thanks very much, Dodie. You've seen the form. Please do fill that in or take it to the stall in the main area and leave that message along with a photo, whatever. Our final speaker this morning then is an MP, the MP for Bradford. He's a committed internationalist, a socialist, a campaigner, and he's been a great friend of Cuba for many years. It's a real honour to introduce George Galloway.
Comrades and friends, there's not much need for me to dwell on the case of the five, as the others have comprehensively done so, except to refer to one of the lines in the message from the prison, in which one of the prisoners thanks you. And I always say, when Cubans say thank you, that there's probably no situation in the world where them thanking us is less applicable. First of all, because we actually don't do as much as we could do. I don't know about you, but I haven't done as much on the Cuban files as I could have done and should have done. I'm on Twitter all day, but I don't often raise the question of the file. You're probably on Twitter all day too. You must ask yourself if you have done everything that you could do. I always ask, traditionally, having spoken at this event and its predecessors for many years, I think it's vital for us to imagine, God forbid, waking up one day to the radio alarm to find that the Cuban Revolution had fallen, to find that the gold-toothed emigres from Miami were on their way back, to turn every health center, every kindergarten, every school built on land expropriated from them after their flight from the country back into the bordellos and casinos and gambling joints of all kinds that the island of Cuba was before the time of the Cuban Revolution. Ask yourselves how you would feel if the enemies of the Cuban Revolution were to prevail. I don't believe that that will ever happen, but it could happen. And then we'd be saying, what did we do to defend Cuba? What did we do to build international solidarity with Cuba? But it would be too late. So if there is anyone in this room who is not already a member of the Cuba Solidarity Campaign, which is, with all respect to all others, by far the best and best organized and best run solidarity campaigns in the country, then you must be so. And you must encourage others to be so. However big the CSC is now, it could be much bigger, because a lot of people take Cuba for granted. But those for whom Cuba has done most don't take it for granted at all. My wife and I have just returned from Beirut, where we attended a very big gala function for the Algerian revolutionary woman Jamila Bouharid. Jamila Bouharid was one of the freedom fighters in the Algerian Revolution, which gave 1.5 million martyrs to overthrow French colonialism in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. She was captured and tortured as a political prisoner. She became an icon, an emblem of the Algerian revolutionary struggle. And the principal speaker at the event, along with Jamila herself, who I'm pleased to say is alive and very well and definitely still kicking, was Dr. Aleda Guevara, the daughter of Comandante Che Guevara. Why? Because the Algerian Revolution would not have prevailed, certainly not have prevailed when it did prevail, if not for the military, political, and other strategic support of the Cuban Revolution. Che Guevara himself, once Rob was with me, we took a red London bus from London to Baghdad in 1999. We stopped in the dead of night in a very small place outside the great city of Oram. As always, I got off the bus and gave a speech to a huge crowd of people who had waited at midnight to hear us. And in the course of my speech, I quoted Comandante Che Guevara. I think it was solidarity, international solidarity is the love between the peoples. And after the speech, an old man came up to me in this small town in Algeria and said, "It's amazing you quoting Che Guevara here, because Che Guevara spoke in this very hall in 1963, immediately after the victory of the Algerian Revolution." It was an extremely moving moment for me. And we heard earlier that Mandela, from the whole world that he could have chosen to go for a real red carpet treatment, the deepest of red carpets, the plushest of limousines, the most sumptuous of welcomes from any of the countries, most of them hypocrites, who had effectively supported the system that put him in jail. Upon his release, he went directly to Cuba. And he did so because of the critical, absolutely pivotal role that Cuba and the revolution had played in the defeat of apartheid. So you'll find no politically conscious person in South Africa or Algeria or Nicaragua or many, many other places where Cuba has played a decisive and important role. You'll find no one there who's taking Cuba for granted. And it's vital that we understand and join that. But I wanted mainly, if I may, I don't know, Bob, you'll tuck my jacket when it's time to stop, but I wanted mainly to locate this issue. I mean, it is truly extraordinary. Not just that the Cuban Five are banged up on trumped up charges, accused actually of spying on terrorists who were blowing up civilian aircraft and other civilian facilities. You'd think they'd get a Congressional Medal of Honor for doing so if they had done so. After all, Tony Blair got one. But how is it that the United States has now, for more than half a century, maintained this posture of subversion and hostility and even military invasion of its neighbor in Cuba? How is it that President Obama can make peace with the Ayatollahs in Tehran, but he cannot normalize relations with a neighbor just 93 miles off the coast of his own country? Having, I may say, been elected on campaign promises to normalize relations with Cuba, but having singularly failed to do so, one of the many, many letdowns and disappointments of the Obama presidency. We just commemorated the 50th anniversary of the murder of President John F. Kennedy. Not many people believe anymore the story that only lunatics like us believed, or disbelieved rather, back at the time that Kennedy was killed by lone, crazed Cuban and Soviet-connected gunmen from the 5th floor of a building as the president's motorcade went past. Not many people believe that anymore. There are many conspiracy theories, but one of the most powerful, in my view, is that Kennedy's failure to follow through the Eisenhower-Nixon administration's invasion of Cuba in the Bay of Pigs to a successful conclusion, his refusal to go to war with the Soviet Union over the issue of armaments on Cuba may very well have played an important role in the conspiracy which led to the president's assassination. But just what is it about Cuba that has occupied the resources, the mind, the military and political and diplomatic efforts of the United States all of this time? Exactly what is it that's so offensive about Cuba? Is it the fact that life expectancy for a baby born even today in Havana is greater than the life expectancy of a baby born in Washington, D.C.? Is it that people live longer in Cuba? Is it that in Cuba they have a standard of health and education and sporting and cultural achievement which dwarfs that of Washington, D.C.? Is it because the Cubans have given their blood to defend liberty and to bring down tyranny in these different parts of the world to which I refer? And of course the answer is it's all of those. It's the example that Cuba now uniquely, virtually in the world, the example which Cuba virtually uniquely displays that another world is possible. Another way of running your society is possible. Every one of us who's been in Cuba knows that the Cuban people are poor if you measure poverty by the number of coins in your pocket. But they are rich beyond the dreams of almost all developing or underdeveloped countries if you measure it by other means. I've told the story before, it's worth repeating. I, along with my comrade John Bevan, who's a fluent Spanish speaker, were driving in Cuba in a very isolated place many years ago now. And we stopped to give a lift to two black women, agricultural cane cutters with their knives, their sickles over their shoulders, who were walking from the fields back to their home. My friend John conversed with them fluently in Spanish. The woman said, "It's good that foreigners are now coming to this part of Cuba." Of course, she said, many Cubans are now traveling abroad, like my daughter. John asked, "What does your daughter do?" She said, "My daughter is a doctor and is abroad in Latin America on a medical solidarity mission." Now let me run that past you again. The daughter of a black cane cutter is a doctor. In every other country in what we call the third world, the daughter of a black cane cutter would herself be a cane cutter. But in Cuba, she can be a doctor. Those of us who've been to Venezuela and have seen in the barrios the heroic work of Cuban doctors, teachers, and other professionals bringing that solidarity in real terms to poor people, know that the Cuban example is vibrant and is luminous. Bob's indicated that it's time for me to close, so let me close with another hardy perennial. According to the laws of aerodynamics, the bumblebee cannot fly. According to the normal laws of economics and politics, at least as dictated by Western orthodoxy, Cuba should not exist. but it exists. Every bit as beautiful as the bumblebee on a summer's afternoon, flying from flower to flower in a way which is aerodynamically impossible. Think about that. Remember that. And do something about keeping it and making it prosper. Thank you.
Thanks very much, George. Over to you. Questions, comments? Gentleman here.
If the current possibilities of diplomatic release doesn't work, what's the chance of at the end of the Obama administration, when he pardons all of the white-collar criminals and elite that should be in prison, what's the possibility of him, and is there any work being done to work towards a presidential pardon for him?
Now and the end of
At the end of his presidency, because that's when they...
Well, I would say that we should concentrate on the current situation between now and the end of his mandate. Because if you know it, everything that's coming out of the mouth of the Gross family, whether it's Alan Gross, his wife, they are addressing themselves to Obama, not the American government. They are not looking ahead down the road 2 years from now or 3 years when someone else will be president. They are specifically mentioning Obama. And on that, they're absolutely right. I agree with them. And I think that we ourselves should concentrate on Obama in the next couple of years. As I mentioned before, there is definitely a change in the language coming from the United States. The senators, the 66 senators, they mentioned very clearly that there should be a humanitarian solution, and Obama should take any measures necessary to find a solution, and that if he does so, Obama will get the support of these 66 senators. In other words, to flesh that out, if Obama makes the move and trades the Cuban prisoners in the United States for gross, and there's a big fuss coming out of Florida, these 66 senators and more will support Obama's decision to have the fact that he had found a humanitarian solution to this. Everyone, even Rice, who is known to be like sort of a hawk in the Obama administration, just a couple of days ago, she said that they think that Gross should be released from prison. But she did not say unconditionally. This is something new. You have people from the Obama administration talking about the release of Gross, but not using the word unconditional. Unconditional meant before, it still means now, that he should be released and there should be no consideration for the Cubans who are still in U.S. jail. This has changed. That's why in my short intervention a few minutes ago, I concentrated on that. And I think that we in the Solidarity Movement should we should not, sometimes people might get feel bad that the Gross family is saying something bad about the Cuban government or whatever. That's not important. The most important thing is because of the historical circumstances, because of the persistence of the Cuban fight inside and outside of prison, because of the work that you people are doing, the Cuban Solidarity Movement is doing here and other countries of the world, we have forced a situation whereby, for the first time, the Obama administration is talking about release of Gross without using the word conditional. And this is important. We have to act now. Now is the time. We've been waiting for this time for 15 years, really. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's possible now for the first time. And we really have to work on it. I would just mention everyone should get involved to increase the pressure on the Obama administration that he should find humanitarian solution. It's not complicated. Humanitarian solution is Gross goes back to the United States, and now there are 4 Cubans go back to Cuba, or in fact, after February, there will be 3 going back to Cuba. That is a humanitarian solution. It is possible. We should fight for it. If it doesn't take place between now and March, I am convinced that your important and historical international commission taking place in this city in March might be a very important point to move forward on the possibility of finding a humanitarian solution to the issue of the Cuban fire.
Yes, I think what we can do is to improve putting together that jury of the millions that Gerardo Hernandez was talking about, was the jury that was going to set them free. And I think we are moving along that road and we can intensify it, as you said. And I was just thinking about something, talking to a young friend of mine yesterday, that a lot of people in this country and all over the world, especially if you're a young worker, you know that the justice system, so it's not just for a lot of people. We are sort of labeled from the beginning. And that's what happened to the 5 Cubans, and that's what's happening, you know, people being stopped by the police all over the country. And I think the Cuban Revolution is an inspiration to a lot of these young people, and also the Cuban 5 as the best examples of this revolution. And the art exhibition that Dodie mentioned, I have some reproductions here, and I just want to refer to the title that Antonia has given to the exhibition, I Will Die the Way I Lived. In other words, they are not broken. The Cuban Revolution is not broken, it's alive, fighting, and these 5 Cubans, they were not broken by this injustice system that wanted to break them, to set an example that the Cuban Revolution can be broken. I think that's something to keep in mind and to get the word out about the Commission and about this art exhibition. Thank you.
Rob? It's great to see so many people in this session. I think that the point Arnold's making about time is now is crucial in this case. And I want people to remember, a bit like the story that I think Victoria was saying about the importance of Angola in Africa and the world. The case of the 5 is intrinsic to unravelling the whole blockade. And while there may be talk from the Obama side and Cuba side, and there's lots of changes going on, the blockade is not going to end while those 5 or 4 now remain in prison. So it's a central element to that. The case is huge in Cuba. Every single person in Cuba knows about the case. And it's, you cannot envisage the normalisation of relations while those 4 are still in prison. There is movement in the case. There is discussions in the case. We know that there are discussions about the case between the 2 governments. And that movement has come about because of the power of solidarity, the power of the solidarity of people like you. Otherwise, those 5 would have just been left languishing, unheard of, forgotten about. It's because of international solidarity that there is potential to get these remaining 4 out. There is potential to support the families in visitations and so forth. And I think the International Commission, which we've heard about, is an essential component. And I was in Cuba a couple of weeks ago, and the International Commission in London is now top of the agenda for the movement in Cuba, for the political leaderships in Cuba, for the families in Cuba. The International Commission in London, they see as a real moment, a real opportunity, because we can reach the US media, who are based here in London. They all have correspondents here in London, and the US media has completely ignored this case. We can bring US trade union leaders, politicians and so forth to London, and we can reach new audiences. Dodie's mentioned some of the names. Only a couple of days ago, Martin Sheen, the Hollywood actor, issued a great statement on the case of the 5. So we're reaching new levels. When we reach the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, we're reaching new people at the moment by sending out a very clear message. We're not looking back over the ins and outs of the case. We're not looking for the blame on this case. We're purely saying now, 15 years is enough. Get these 5 home, get the 4 home. Whatever your point of view, whatever your politics are, you can be the most right-wing person in the States and think these guys are spies, they're communists, they're whatever. But 15 years is a long time. Send them home, let's move forward. And that's the central message of the Commission. And I really hope that everybody here who's heard brilliant speeches here will sign up today. Make sure you put your email address very clearly on there to the Commission message board, because I think it's over 70 countries now are represented on that message board, and we want that message board to be the voice of the world, and that the Commission will embody that voice here in London to show that the world has had enough of this injustice and that it's really time now to see an end to this ridiculous case, a legacy of a Cold War policy, an anachronistic Cold War policy. It's time for those wars to get back. And everyone here can play a part in that. So please, as George and Arnold and Dodie have said, you have a role in it. So please don't go away without signing up that message board and getting involved in spreading the word about this case. Because I believe strongly that we are getting very close to seeing an end to this injustice, and together we can make that happen.
The framework, the punitive sentences. There is no other explanation but that this is another example of Washington's aggression against the Cuban people for having overturned capitalist rule and and putting themselves in power, and in the context of changing the world in which they lived, transforming themselves into new men and women that puts human solidarity at the top of their agenda. And the five are products of that revolution. Steadfast working class fighters throughout their entire lives, participants, as George reminded us in the plenary, in Cuba's internationalist mission in Angola, and people who continue to do politics from behind bars. My favorite message on Mandela was the one by Gerardo Hernandez, which if you've not seen, I don't have the time to do it, but if you've not seen it, look and read it. It's absolutely wonderful. They don't just campaign about their own case, they campaign about world politics, unbroken from behind bars. And they're a tremendous inspiration. That brings me on to my second point. When will they be released? They will be released when the Obama administration considers that they pay a bigger political price for keeping them in than for letting them go. And that depends on what Gerardo Hernandez says is the jury of millions. And if it's going to be a jury of millions, it's got to involve working people around the world. And the greatest inspiration, the best tool we have in carving out that jury of millions amongst working people is the five themselves. Their inspiration, their steadfastness, the fact that they're unbroken, the fact that they, as Gerardo says, are like the glory of Nelson Mandela. That's what we have, that's what we should use, that's the message we have today.
Chair, I just wanted to say something. The Notting Hill Carnival attracts about 1 million people. It's second to the one in Rio. But there is no float for Cuba. If we had a float for Cuba, we could, have people dancing around in the Miami 5, end the blockade. We could have the best salsa band on the whole of the Notting Hill Carnival. And I raised this in the union because Tony Woodley used to represent board workers. He saved me from getting sacked on one occasion. And Tony Woodley's done terrific work on the Miami 5. And I raised it with Diana Holland as well, but we need more people. If they think that's a good idea, we should do it. And I said to Tony Woodley, and he shrunk because he's a good speaker, but I said to him, how did he feel like doing a bit of rapping on the back of a float? And that cracked him up. But George could do the rapping on the back of the float. We could impact a lot of people if we were able to organise that.
Okay, bit rattle. Arnold, do you want to say anything?
Okay. I would like to say one thing based on the songs and all that. I agree very much that with what Rob said, that now is a crucial time with regards to the human rights. And it is definitely linked to the question of the U.S. blockade against Cuba. We know that was only any possibility back from having some kind of a discussion between the two countries, at least scaling back the economic blockade. On the question of the swap,
I think it's important that there is unity in the movement. For example, when I was in the United States a few weeks ago, someone from a left-wing group said she didn't really feel that it was a good idea to have this swap. It would promote the dignity of the Cuban Five, who are anti-terrorist fighters, to be swapped for someone like Gross. I think that is completely ridiculous. There is only one issue: to get the Cuban Five out of prison. And in exchange for Gross, there's no problem with that, irrespective of what the Gross family says. The Cuban Five, they know who they are. They fought 15 years. They refused to surrender to all the attempts by the United States to make them capitulate and denounce their country. They went through that for all these years. The 11 of the Cuban nation know who the Cuban Five are. We know who the Cuban Five are, or the Miami Five are, as they are known here. Everything else is completely irrelevant. It should not come into the discussion. I think that we should just concentrate on that. A humanitarian solution, freeing the Cuban Five in exchange for Alan Gross. We're at that point now, and we have to make sure that this takes place.
Dodie? Yeah, I think that it is a good point that the Five actually continue the fight in prison. I think René said that, we're continuing this fight, we're just in another trench. They're very active in prison and what they do, and that really helps us as campaigners. In every letter that we send out asking for support and on the website and everything, we use this jury of millions idea. But we use the full quote, and what is being said here is that at the end of the day, this is a political case, and we will have no justice at all, they say, if we rely on U.S. justice. They say that in the end of the day, it will be decided by the jury of millions, and that's by people like us and abroad. And that's what we think the Commission can do. We think that it can actually forge a very powerful force internationally that will set the basis for the release of the Five. As Rob said, it doesn't matter what you think of Cuba. For this campaign, we're just saying enough is enough, release the Five. So we can all do something to help build the Commission and to get the Five full freedom. And I want to just once again appeal to everyone. You've got this on your seat. Please just, everyone, fill it out, and we're outside there, there's a, right in the middle, and if you come in hand again and we can take a quick photograph of you, we want to get 100 people to sign up today, and it's quite important because then you can say, I'm on this website to your workmates, your colleagues, whatever, and explain to them why you're on it, and get them to sign up as well.
Thanks very much, Dodie. George, final word from you, please.
Of course, it goes against the grain to release Gross is certainly not worth for Cubans. Not 500 Grosses would be worth one of such men, but the pragmatic reality is that if this deal can be done, it should be done. And from what I'm hearing, there is a possibility that it can be done. But it will not be done unless, as was said in fact from the floor, the political conditions are that President Obama does not feel that the price that he would pay would be greater than the price that he would pay if he doesn't. And that's where the jury of millions comes in. And we have to demonstrate to the United States government, which has more than enough problems in international perception, that this is an injustice too far and that 15 years is more than long enough. And I'm confident that we can do that. And so the March events in London, which have been prioritized by the Cuban leadership, are very important, and everyone should take cognizance of that. As to what can be done by ordinary citizens in this country. Undoubtedly, there are already motions on the order paper on calling for the release of the 5. More importantly, more broadly, demanding an end to the embargo and the blockade. And we have come far in this Britain. I interviewed the Tory grandee David Davis on my Russia Today programme just last week. He was the British Foreign Office Minister in the Major administration, to which I and others from the campaign went and negotiated the change in the British government's position under John Major to one of opposition to the blockade, voting against the United States in international fora on this question. And that was a long time ago now. That's nearly 20 years ago, certainly more than 15. So we've come a long way. We've come a long way in winning, through public opinion, the British political class to a recognition that actually it's a very stupid policy, if not a very bad one. We think it's bad and stupid. They just think it's stupid to maintain a posture of hostility and quarantine and embargo on the people of Cuba. But much more can be done. If every one of you, after this, emails your Member of Parliament, you just reverse their name, so my email is gallowayg@parliament.uk, so just find out who your MP is, reverse their name at parliament.uk, and ask them if they will sign the motions calling for the release of the 5 and an end to the blockade, and indicate, not rudely, that your vote at the next general election, which is coming up quite soon, as Dr. Johnson said, the knowledge that one is to be hanged in the morning concentrates the mind wonderfully. These people are to be hanged in 2015, I hope. And just indicate that you are someone who is asking them, who will soon be asking you for your support at the general election to do more, and certainly append their names to the demand. I don't know, Rob will know how many people have signed the motion on the 5, but I'm pretty sure it's well short of a majority at this point.
126 MPs.
Well, 126 is a very respectable tally, but there are 650 MPs, you say I need to vote. There are 650 MPs, so it's still well short of a majority, and so there's still something that you can do. Thanks for the opportunity.
You've told me enough that you have to do, please do it, but it's time now to go to the next session. Thanks very much for attending.